and welcome to the next edition of the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Transformation Interview Series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on IT transformation and innovation and how it's making an impact on people's lives. Our next hybrid computing case study discussion explores how increased virtualization across data centers translates into the need for new approaches to security, compliance, and governance. Just as next-generation data centers and private clouds are gaining traction, security threats are on the rise and attack techniques are getting more sophisticated. Are yesterday's perimeter-based security infrastructure methods up to the task? Or are new approaches needed to gain policy-based control over all virtual assets at all times? Here to explore the future of security for virtual workloads, I'm pleased to welcome Holland Berry, CTO at Catbird in Scotts Valley, California. Welcome, Holland.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about why it's a different picture nowadays when we look at data centers, when we think about private clouds. Oftentimes, people think similarly about security. You just wrap a firewall around it, and you're okay. Why isn't that the case? What's new?
Yeah, so as we've introduced many layers of abstraction into the data center, trying to adapt those physical appliances that don't move around as fluid as the workloads are protecting, it's become an issue. And as people virtualize more and we go more to this notion of a software-defined data center, it's just proven a challenge to keep up. And we know that layer on the perimeter is probably not sufficient anymore.
It also strikes me that it's a moving target. Virtual workloads come and go. You want elasticity. You want to be able to have fit-for-purpose infrastructure, but that is also a challenge when perhaps you can't keep track of things and therefore secure them.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So yeah, the transient nature of workloads themselves make any type of rigid enforcement, from a single device pretty tough to deal with. So you need something that was built to be fluid alongside those dynamic workloads.
And I suppose, too, that architects that are putting more virtualization together across the data center, the software-defined data center, if you will, aren't always culturally aligned with the security folks. So you have more than just a technology issue here. Tell us a little bit about what Catbird does that goes beyond just the technology and perhaps works towards a cultural and organizational benefit.
Yeah, so just from an interface standpoint, or try to create a tool that can cater to those different administrative silos, right? You have people who have virtualization expertise, compute expertise, and then different security practice expertise. And there's many swim lanes within that security category. And the next generation set of workloads in the hybrid IT environment is going to demand more of a skill set that can span all those domains.
Right. We talk a lot, too, about DevOps and SecOps, security operations combining. There's also this need for automation and orchestration. So policy-based seems to be really the only option to keep up with the speed on security.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There has to be an application-centric approach to how you're applying security to your workloads. And ideally, that would be something that could be templatized, defined up front. So as new workloads present themselves on the network, there's already a predetermined way to how they're going to be secured. And that security will take place right up against the edge of that workload.
All right. Holland, tell me a little bit about Catbird, what you do, how you're deployed, and how we go about solving some of these challenges.
Yeah, that's great. So Catbird was really born and raised in virtualized environments. Been around for a number of years. And it was really this notion of bringing the perimeter and kind of the control landscape closer to the workload. And that's via hypervisor integration and also via the virtual data path integration. So kind of having a couple different vantage points from within the fabric and applying security with a purpose-built solution that can span multiple platforms. So that hybrid IT environment, which is becoming our reality, you might have a little bit of OpenStack, you might have a little bit of VMware. Having that single point of policy definition and enforcement, I think, is going to be critical to people adopting and really taking the next leap to put a layer of defense in their data center.
How are you deployed? You're a software appliance yourself, virtualized software?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so our solution's comprised of two components, and it's a very basic hub and spoke architecture, right? So we've got a policy enforcement point, virtual machine appliance that installs out on each hypervisor, and we have a management node we call the control center. Again, that's another virtual machine, and those two talk together, components talk together in a secure manner.
Great. Tell us a bit, if you will, about a typical scenario where this type of east-west traffic virtualization environment security works better and how it protects? Are there some typical examples that would demonstrate where the perimeter would be broken down, but that yours got the task done?
Yeah, so I think any time that you need to have the granularity of not only visibility but enforcement down to the, I'm going to get a little technical here, but the UUID of the VNIC, that smallest unit of measure as it relates to a workload, that's really where we shine, because that's where we do our enforcement.
Okay. How about partnerships? Obviously, you're working in an environment where there are a lot of different technologies, lots of moving parts. What's going on with you and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise in terms of deployment, working with private cloud operating systems, and then perhaps even moving towards modeling and some of the ArcSight technology?
Yeah, so we've got a number of different integration points inside HPE's portfolio. We're a Helion-ready certified partner. We just announced our support for the 2.0 Helion OpenStack release. We're doing a lot of work with the ArcSight team in terms of getting these very detailed event feeds and visibility into the virtualized workloads. And we just announced some work that we're doing with the HPE's HPN team around their SD band controller as well. So extending Catbird's east-west visibility into the physical domain, leveraging the placement, if you will, of the SDN controller and its command over the switches. So it's pretty exciting work there.
Yeah, let's dig into that a bit. The software-defined networking advances that are going on and how that's changing not only how people think about deployment and management of infrastructure and data centers. Doesn't this really give you actually some significant boosts in the way that you can engage with security, intercept and stop issues before they propagate? What is it about software-defined networking that is good for security?
Yeah, so as the edges of what have traditionally been rigid network boundaries become fluid as well, knowing the state of the network, knowing the state of the workload is going to be critical to applying those traditional security controls. And so we're really trying to tie all this together, not only with our integration with Helion, but utilizing SemTool and also utilizing the knowledge that the SDN controller has the data path. We can surface indications of compromise and maybe get you to a problem a little bit quicker than the traditional methods.
Okay, I always like to try to show and not just tell. Yeah. Do you have any examples of organizations that are doing this, what it's done for them, and why it's a path to even greater future benefits as they further virtualize and go to perhaps even larger hybrid environments?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't name them by name, but one of the U.S.'s largest carriers, telcos, is one of our customers, and they came to us to really solve a problem of that consistency of policy definition and enforcement across those hybrid platforms. So it's amongst VMware and OpenStack workloads. Not only for the application of the security controls and not only for the visibility of the traffic, but also the evidence and assurance of compliance, right? Being able to do mapping back to regulatory frameworks, things like that. So a couple different use cases in there, but it's really that notion where I can do in an agentless fashion, and I think that's an important thing to differentiate and point out about our solution is you don't have to install an agent within the workload. We don't require a presence inside the OS. We're doing it just outside of the workload at the hypervisor level, and it's key that we have these specific tailored integrations to the different hypervisor platforms so we can abstract away the complexity of applying the security controls where you just have a single pane of glass, so you define the security policy, and it doesn't matter which platform you're on. It's going to be able to do it in that agentless fashion.
Of course, the march of technology continues, and we're not just dealing with virtualization. We're now talking about containers, microservices, composable infrastructure.
Absolutely.
How will your solution in conjunction with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise adapt to that? And is there more of a role as you get closer to the edge, even out into the Internet of Things, where we're talking about all sorts of more discrete devices really extending the network in all directions?
Yeah, so as the workload types proliferate and we get fancier about how we virtualize things, whether that's using a container or virtualization platform, and then the vast amount of IoT devices that are going to present themselves, we're working closely with the HP team in lockstep as mass adoption of these technologies happen. We've got plans in place to solve kind of platform by platform. And we believe taking an approach where we're looking at that specific problem and saying, how are we going to attack this thing while keeping that bigger vision of we're still going to keep you in that same console, and the method in which you apply the security is going to be the same. Containers is a great example, something that we know we need to tackle, something that's getting adopted in a fashion far more than I've ever seen anything else, actually. That's a pretty exciting one. So. But at the end of the day, it's a way of virtualizing a service called microservices. We're very aware of it, and I think our method of doing the security control application is going to be the one that wins.
Yeah, pretty hard to secure a perimeter when there really isn't a perimeter.
Perimeter's quickly fading, it seems. Right. Yeah.
Okay, super. We'll have to leave it there. We've been exploring how increased virtualization across data centers translates into the need for new approaches to security, compliance, and governance. And we've seen how policy-based control over all virtual assets provides a greater protection and management for next-generation data centers. So a big thank you to our guest. We've been joined by Holland Berry, CTO at Catbird. Thank you, Holland.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And a big thank you to our audience as well for joining us for this Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Transformation and Innovation interview. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of HPE-sponsored discussions. Thanks again for listening, and come back next time.